Are you thinking about moving to Seattle, Washington, and you're still maybe weighing your options? Well, in this video, I'm going to share with you my top 6 reasons why I think you might need to reconsider moving to Seattle, Washington. Stay tuned. So some of you might be asking, why am I making a video of the top 6 reasons why I think you might not want to live in Seattle, Washington? I have grown up here, I'm currently raising a family here, and I love Seattle, Washington. But my goal is to be 100% honest with you guys and keep it real. So in this video, I'm going to share with you my own opinions and perspectives on what it might look like moving to Seattle, Washington, and some of the things you might want to consider if you're moving from out of state and relocating. Seattle to me has been home. I love it. It's always consistently ranked in the top 10 best places to live. We're surrounded by lush evergreen forests. We're famous for being environmentally friendly. We have on average some of the highest paying wages here in Seattle, Washington. So there's many reasons to love living in Seattle, Washington, but I'm gonna get into some of the reasons why you might not think it's the best place, and it might give you some other things to think about when you're relocating. So I'm gonna keep it 100% honest, 100% real with you. My goal is to share with you guys what it's like to eat, live, work, play, sleep in Seattle, Washington. And so if you're looking to relocate, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and my team. That's our information below. Please feel free to text, email, or call us. Even write me a letter. I'll write one back to you. My name is Francisco Dictado. I am a licensed real estate broker here in Seattle, Washington, and in the surrounding areas, and I'd be more than happy to show you guys what I mean about what it's like to live, work, eat, play in Seattle, Washington. Okay, number 1 on my list, masks. As of October 2021, there is still a mask mandate here in Seattle, Washington. Anyone over the age of 5 years old, regardless of vaccination status, must wear a mask in indoor spaces. And additionally, any events outdoor with more than 500 people, you are still required to wear a mask. Businesses can legally deny you service inside their facilities if you are not wearing a mask. They can obstruct you from entering, so keep that in mind if masks wearing is something you're adverse to. For example, I went to a Seahawks game. I've been to a couple here in Seattle recently, and there's about 70,000 people. It's an outdoor stadium, but everyone is asked to wear a mask, and everyone who enters the stadium must show proof of vaccination. When you walk into a restaurant, as you walk in, they ask that you wear masks. When you go sit down and eat, you wear masks. If you are eating or drinking, that's when they allow you to take the masks off. But if you get up to go use the bathroom, walk in their hallways, it's pretty common to see everyone wearing a mask. And that's just kind of how it is. We've been really conservative ever since COVID. We've had some of the strictest COVID regulations throughout the whole pandemic. And they're starting to loosen up. I think one of the reasons why that's the case is because almost 80% of residents in King County in Seattle are vaccinated, which is a pretty high rate. And so, you know, this can be a good or bad thing for some people thinking about moving to Seattle, Washington. But in general, we have one of the strictest mask mandates, but we do have one of the highest vaccination rates in all of the country. So there's a trade-off there. I don't think that we would have been able to open up and have businesses at full capacity without the vaccination, obviously. And when you're in indoor spaces, businesses are still asking and requiring of you to wear masks, regardless of your vaccination status. So masks, it's a thing here, not going away, and something to consider. Number 2 on my list, that sticky icky, marijuana, weed, Buddha, the ganja, That is legal in Seattle, Washington.
Damn!
If you're of age, 21 years or older, you are legally allowed to purchase up to 1 ounce of marijuana. And you are not able to smoke the marijuana indoors or in restaurants or anything like that. You still have to be 25 feet away from door openings and places of business, but it's very commonplace now to be walking around and smelling the weed smoke, just like back in the day when you'd be outdoors and you'd smell cigarette smoke. Replace that now with weed here in Seattle, Washington. This also draws some weed tourism, and some people come here just for the experience of going into a pot shop and buying edibles or buying blunts or buying joints. And there's actually some really cool stuff in there to be seen. I've actually purchased some creams that help with pain, and also there's like weed infused soda, gummies, and all that. So obviously, that business is thriving and growing. And so weed, if that's something that you are adverse to or concerned about, that's something to definitely take into consideration, because it is legal in Seattle. You will smell it, and it will be visible to you in and around the Seattle, Washington area. Number 3 on my list, seafood. If you don't like great seafood, don't come to Seattle, Washington. I believe in my heart of hearts that we have some of the best, if not the best, seafood in all of the United States. I've traveled down south and had the catfish and crawfish. I've been to the East Coast and had some of those delicacies, but the Dungeness crab that you can find here offshore in Seattle is some of the best tasting crab I think you'll ever find. No disrespect to the blue crab on the East Coast, but there's just way more meat and things to sink your teeth into when it comes to the Dungeness crab up here. The salmon fishing up here is world famous, and also being that we're in the top left-hand corner of the United States, we're really close to Alaska, so some of the best seafood obviously comes from there, and we're one of the closest states to Alaska, and so getting that fresh flown is definitely an advantage. Obviously, seafood in Hawaii, seafood on California and in the East Coast ranks right up there, but I would be hard pressed to believe that we don't have some of the best, if not the best, seafood in all of the United States. We've got tons of great restaurants all along the waterfront that serve seafood. The sushi here is spectacular, and being that you can go to a river, go offshore to the sound and cast a line and pull something out and have it fresh for dinner, I think is a super great advantage. It's not like eating salmon, say, in Ohio, which I did make that mistake one time visiting. Don't know what I was thinking and why I ordered salmon in Ohio. I'll never make that mistake again. But there is nothing like having fresh salmon, fish and chips here in Seattle. It just doesn't compare. I know that the crawfish and the catfish down south are super popular, but I would definitely stack up the salmon and the Dungeness crab with anything the rest of the country has to offer. All right, so next on my list is hills, something that a lot of people probably overlook, the topography of Seattle, Washington. So Seattle was built in and around 7 prominent hills, all of them, about 400 to 500 feet in height, but they are very steep. And so if you are coming to Seattle, Washington from, say, the Midwest or the flatlands of Florida, you are gonna find lots of hills here in Seattle, Washington, more than you've ever seen in your life. And what makes the hills somewhat of a obstacle maybe is if we're driving in the rain, if you're driving a stick shift, if you're in downtown Seattle at a red light, that's when the hills become a real problem. I remember growing up and I learned how to drive on a manual, so a stick shift. And I just remember thinking to myself, why do we have so many hills in Seattle? And it doesn't fail. If you're driving stick for the first time, you will find a hill and you will be at a red light. That's just kind of how it goes. The hills are also one of the main reasons why Seattle shuts down when it snows or when we get below freezing here. Those hills just create a huge road hazard because the moisture will freeze and it'll cause people to slip, and lots of car accidents happen that way. So one of the main reasons, again, we shut down is because we have so many hills here in Seattle, Washington, and it does become sort of a precautionary thing here. So one thing to consider, maybe you are into hills and you like running up and down hills for cardio or training, but in transportation wise and moving around Seattle, Washington, you need to know that we are amongst the hills, and there are some drawbacks to that. And mostly that comes into play when the weather gets bad, if it snows, that sort of thing. But otherwise, the hills are great because you get beautiful views from the top of the hills. You get great perspectives of, say, a Space Needle and the water. You get to see all of those beautiful natural elements that Seattle has to offer together from a different perspective. So very hilly here in Seattle. Keep that in mind when you're thinking about moving. All right, so this next reason I've talked about many times in my other videos, if you've watched them, is traffic. Traffic is bad in Seattle, Washington. We are a major city and we do have traffic. If you don't like traffic, I've got some times to suggest for you. We're mostly at the peak of congestion around 6:30 and 7 a.m. and then we pick right back up again around 2:30 to 5:30 p.m. And the reason why I believe we are in so much traffic beginning around 2:30 is because that's when the first shift of most Boeing employees ends. And so there's a lot of people leaving the Boeing facilities, and they're using the freeways and the highways. And so that's what really initiates the traffic. And then obviously all the other businesses in and around Seattle join in. So traffic, I would suggest, if you can, pushing your commute past 8 or 6:30 p.m. if you could. And to build off of this reason, in the winter and fall here, when it starts to rain and when it gets dark quicker, that just adds to the traffic problem because for whatever reason, people just forget how to drive in the rain. Now, I've been able to visit other places and I feel like the traffic here is bad and the driving here is bad, but it's nothing compared to the driving that I've seen in, say, like Florida. Those places it's a totally different type of bad driver. Here in Seattle, you've got the weather elements, which are the rain. You've got the gray skies. When you're getting off work, you're typically driving in the night. When you're going to work in the winter or fall, you're most likely driving in the night, and so that makes it a little tough, I think, visually for some people, which adds to the problem of traffic. I will say though that the traffic levels have gone down since COVID has started. I think a lot of businesses, especially the tech industry here in Seattle, has learned how to remotely commute. And so a lot of people are not commuting to and from the work 5 days a week anymore. I know Amazon just delayed the date of when employees are expected to be back in office. And so that they pushed that back. And so that's helped with the levels. So traffic here in Washington, or Seattle, Washington to be specific, is a thing. I would recommend, if you could, push your commute back to 6:30, 7 o'clock p.m. if you can, just to save you some time. And if you can telecommute, get a high-paying job in Seattle, maybe traffic isn't such a big deal for you. If it is, just know that I-5 will be congested, so you might want to think about light rail. Carpooling is a big thing here. So there are definitely ways around the traffic, but this is not a small town anymore, so we are going to have some gridlock. Next up, the gray skies. And yes, I've talked about this in my past videos, but I really believe it's worth mentioning because I can't emphasize enough to the newbies around that it's not the rain here in Seattle that's such a big deterrent. I think it's the gray skies. The gray skies can hang around all day for months on end, and that's what I think really gets to people here. For example, we're October 20th-ish right now as I'm filming this video. The sun rose at 7 a.m. and the sun will go down at 6:45, which isn't bad. It's a pretty typical day, but I woke up to gray skies and drizzle. In the dead of winter, that's when it gets really tough, because at times the sun will go down at 4:30. So imagine waking up, say around 6:30 to get ready for work. Sun is still not up, and then as you drive into work in the nighttime, because the sun hasn't came up yet, it's still dark out. So you're at work for say 8 hours. You get off work, and then at 4:30 the sun goes down. So you've literally been at work all day. Maybe you haven't been outside, so you haven't gotten to see the sun or gotten any fresh air. So your day just kind of flies by like that. And I think one of the things that makes this a concern is because the most important part of the day for most people is the end of the day, after work, after school. And so, if you don't have any daylight, it makes it hard to be outside, to be active, or to want to be active. So Seattle is working on passing a bill or a law federally that will keep us on standard time, which means in the fall and winter, we don't fall back. We don't change our clocks. But that would also mean that the sun would go up about 9 a.m. in the dead of winter. But the main thing there is the sun would go down at 5:30, which in theory would allow some people to get off school, get off of work, and still be able to recreate and enjoy some of the outdoors before the day was done, which could lead to better health, better mood, even maybe some better productivity. So that's one thing to consider when you're thinking about moving to Seattle, Washington. The gray skies, can you deal with it? Is it something that you can maybe overlook when you're coming over here? There's plenty of things you can do indoors, and Seattle is well equipped. But for most people, being outdoors and having the sunlight is very important. So the trade-off is in the summertime, being this far north, that the sun comes up pretty early and it doesn't go down until about 9:30, 10 o'clock in the dead of summer. So there's definitely a trade-off. If you can make it through those gray, dark winter and fall evenings, the payoff is spring and summer, where the sun goes down really, really late, and so you can stay out longer and recreate even longer and enjoy just the great outdoors here and everything Seattle has to offer. But keep in mind, gray skies, it's what causes seasonal depression, in my opinion, and what could be a really hard thing to transition and adapt to, especially if you're coming from, say, California, Texas, Florida. The sun here disappears for about 3 to 6 months out of the year. All right, last on my list, but definitely not least, Washington state income tax. If you love paying state income tax, don't move to Seattle, Washington. Why? Because we don't have any. But, and the big but is, Seattle has the 5th highest sales tax in all the nation at 10.1%. The trade-off to this is that no one is forcing you to go buy that new boat, to buy that new car, or to buy that new purse or new pair of shoes. You can be somewhat selective in how you choose to participate in paying that sales tax, right? And that's one of the small trade-offs to having no state income tax, I guess, is having an elevated sales tax to pay for all of those things like roads and public utilities and so forth. So there's a trade-off there. Seattle in general, or in Washington, we are 29th for median property tax rates by state, at right around 1%. In comparison, New Jersey, which is the highest median rate, is at 2.47%. So you can expect to pay on average about $4,600 in property taxes here a year, which is high, but you are also living in a place where you are able to typically earn a little bit more in wages compared to the rest of the United States of America. So again, there's that trade-off. Maybe it's something that can be overlooked with the high-paying jobs that we have available here. For some people, that the hack to this is going to shop in, say, Oregon or Portland, where I stock up on shoes, or clothes and Nike goods because there's no sales tax there. And so shopping down in Portland in general has always been sort of fun because we get a 10% discount right off of the bat. And then if you get to go to the Nike employee store, that's an extra 40%. But so, you know, a lot of people will sometimes make a trip out of it. It's 3 hours away, Portland is. So shopping down there is always fun. It's a nice little getaway as well. But sales tax here in Washington is 10.1%, which is pretty damn high. But no state income tax. So something to consider. If you're buying from Amazon, you're still gonna get taxed the rate here in Seattle. So there's that state income tax. I hope you guys found this list helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments. I'd love to address them. If there's any new video titles you'd like for me to get into, I'd love to hear from you. Again, we're here to hopefully help you have a different perspective and maybe help you form a different opinion when it comes to eating, living, working, sleeping in Seattle, Washington. My goal here is to be a resource for you guys, eyes and ears, for anyone who's thinking about relocating to Seattle, Washington. Me and my team would be happy to help you. Please, again, like and subscribe to the channel, and please feel free to reach out via text or email, cell phone, write us a letter. I'd be more than happy to answer your questions. I answer questions every day about what it's like to live in Seattle, Washington, and I'd be more than happy to take you on a tour and show you some of the great homes we have here to offer. If you're looking for a new house, please reach out to us. My goal is to continue to make these videos for you, to give you guys an insider's look on what it is to really live here and what it feels like to see yourself in this space and what they call the Emerald City, Seattle, Washington. So thanks again for viewing. If you haven't, please hit that subscribe button and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about the channel. Let me know if there's any other titles or topics that you want me to get into. We'll catch you in the next show. Thank you.